Welcome back everyone. So glad you're here and thank you for your great feedbacks for the part 1 of this mini series about the birth of AI economy. We started a journey to find answers to these 4 questions. Is there a way that we can learn from our history about today's transition? What will transitioning from knowledge economy to AI economy look like? How will AI economy progress and what are the opportunities for us to adapt to this grand shift in the economy? And I tried my best to answer the first and second questions in the part 1 by restructuring economical transformation through problem and solution dynamics and their impacts on converting core capital to value, which I found useful when looking to history through the cause and effect perspective. And our key learning was that each era is defined by a dominant problem and solutions to that problem, followed by an emerging issue, mainly arisen because of the solution, and that emerging problem gets intensified and becomes the dominant problem of the next era. If you haven't watched already, you can find it in the iCard and in the description below. Obviously, there were and are many problems in these eras, and some of them are still not addressed completely when we look back today. All eras have still residual values, and we still exercise many practices which had their roots from these eras. For example, we have agricultural economy but organized in the knowledge economies model across the majority of societies. Or we still pay taxes to governing bodies to get security and other services, but not in the form of like crops and goods. It is now reorganized in the knowledge economy as modern democracies. And as these practices reorganized in the current economy, some of the unaddressed problems of these eras are still with us. Let's take the inequalities in wealth distribution, for example. It's possibly became problematic with the rise of agriculture economy, but we started to perceive this issue as a problem very recently. And as a rule of thumb, if a problem is not perceived as a problem by majority, either by a major population or major players in the economy, or in general some major powers in the economy, then it won't be addressed by the dynamics of the system. That's a crucial nuance in differentiating economical eras because there exist many problems at any time in human history, but only the ones that are perceived as a problem are addressed by the economy. And we will talk about this perception dynamics in future when we explore the communication topic in this channel. So, how is that happening? Who decides what to be sold first? Spoiler alert, it's not the invisible hand, and that's a really long topic to discuss, and for the time being we can call it simply the power dynamics between different form of powers like military, economy, market, knowledge, and recently AI power residing below the problem and solution dynamics. And moreover, media and communications are the epicenter of this dynamic, yet masses are unable to influence it most of the time, right? Let's park this topic for now and talk later after the system thinking series because it will be easier once you grasp the fundamentals of systems thinking. If you don't want to miss what's coming, subscribe and ring the bell button now. So, as we have talked in the first part of this series, we are still in the knowledge economy. That is, the major value creation is happening in the knowledge economy model, and we are transitioning into AI economy, which means major activities that create the most value will shift to the hands of AI. And for this economy, we perceive 3 groups of dominant problems. These are economic activities, energy consumption, and social and cultural problems. Let's begin with unfolding the first dominant problem, that is the economic activities, which has the problem of continuously increasing amount of data and information, causing the decision-making processes become more complex and inefficient. This is a reinforcing loop problem because as you increase the amount of data and information, it makes decision making more complex, and as the complexity increases, it creates inefficiencies in the output, which economy does not desire. So, to become efficient, You look for more data and information to correct your decision making, but it makes things more complex in the long run. If you remember, this problem emerged in the late industrial economy in the form of need for managing inefficiencies to scale manufacturing better and faster and achieve a sustainable growth. We overcome this problem by first increasing our cognitive capacity by researching, finding, and trading know how, and educating masses for executing that know how, which led to knowledge economy. And then we invented digital systems and internet to make things even more efficient, at least until we make things more complex than ever. And we reach to the point where solving inefficiencies and making decisions become impossible with this incomprehensible loss of data because things surpass our cognitive capacity. So, what did we do? We invented artificial cognitive capacity, so to speak. I want you to understand one thing very clear. This shift from knowledge economy to AI economy began with a paradigm shift in software industry. Softwares are the pinnacles of knowledge economy, and because we research things, understand the processes in those topics, and then we program machines through softwares with those processes, obviously, to create results. Let's call this mindset the machine 1.0. You have dirty clothes, you design, manufacture, and program a washing machine. You put your dirty clothes in and get the clean water out. You need to go a place and you don't know how to go. You open the Google Maps, type the address as an input, push the go button, and the software calculates the route and gets back to you as output. This is how we thrived in knowledge economy. We created softwares to automate solutions for our problems. That is, we understood the process for solution. This economy has its limits to the known processes, right? If you figure out how to make a thing, then you can program the machine to do the thing. If you don't know how to make a thing, then there is no business to make out of it. Is it clear? As early as the rise of computing machines, a small group of researchers established a branch called machine learning with the idea of making machines figure out these processes. And today, this mindset that feeding inputs and outputs into machines to get the processes, which I call Machine 2.0, is materialized in the form of AI, which will eventually decrease the complexities in decision making as it figures out the right processes and solve the inefficiencies. Meaning that this reinforcing loop that intensified the dominant problem in economic activities since the industrial economy will be finally dismantled and resolved. And we will see a quantum leap by feeding the processes extracted from machine 2.0 to 1.0 and create a new reinforcing growth loop for this economy. So as I said earlier in this video, the highest value created in the economy will shift from machine 1.0 to 2.0. We are still in the early days of this new phenomenon for this machine 2.0 and developing tons of AI applications to deal with everyday stuff and help aid people to decide smarter and faster through augmenting them. And in a couple of years, AI will possibly autopilot many complex tasks, but now we are crawling through two completely different complexities to develop our AI models further and faster. One being philosophical and the other one being technical. The first philosophical one is about ensuring ethical and accurate AI automated decision making because machines do whatever it is programmed to do and we are still having troubles to understand how it does. That's a very deep topic to discuss here, so if you want to learn more, we can talk about it in the future. However, the technical one is that developing a full-grown AI or AGI requires us to overcome at least 5 known barriers. 2 of them are external barriers. They are robotics and neuroscience. We still need to figure further out how our brain and neural system works to unlock better learning models and replicate its commandment model on muscles for robotics as well. And it seems like we try many approaches to jump over these two barriers, but each of these topics are well above my knowledge level, so I stop here for them. Maybe in future we host experts in this channel to understand these topics better. And the other three of these barriers are internal to AI. They are model size, data size, and computing power. Model size is the number of parameters that an LLM learns during training. That's what we extract from the machine 2.0. And intuitively, it feels like it's endless, but there are limits as with everything. Yet we have a big room here to reach to the limits for the time being. However, for the other two internal barriers, we are reaching to limits. Let's look at the data size, that is the amount of data we fed into these models. And you possibly heard that current models have eaten entire data humanity generated up to this date. What it means that we reach to the barrier to develop AI models further. Currently, we try to solve this problem by two potential approaches and pouring money on them. First solution is a cheaper one, which is synthetic data. That is using previous generation machines like GPT-4 to populate outputs and then use those outputs to feed into GPT-5's model to expand its parameters. There's a debate about its limit and efficiency, but for now it looks like it's working. However, the second solution is a novel approach to solve this problem, which is called metacognition. The current approaches in LLMs is to predict the next word, but human mind doesn't work like that, right? We begin with an idea, we outline it, fill it with words of evidence or supporting ideas, and then we first draft it and we use that outline while writing and then check its coherence and edit back again. Metacognition is adapting these approaches into LLMs. It is thinking about what you are thinking. That's a mental shift in the design of an LLM, and obviously you need way less data to get a prediction in this new model. This can improve performance by orders of magnitude and overcome data size barrier. Currently, from OpenAI to Microsoft and Google, everyone is investing in metacognition, and I'm sure we will have a breakthrough soon. The last barrier, computing power, is a bit straightforward. To run all these predictive models, you need a huge computing power because of the complexity of these models. And that power comes from the transistors on a semiconductor. The more and smaller these transistors on the chip, the more computational power you get per area. And obviously, as you scale the number of chips, you reach to the required power for this computing. So, there are two sub-barriers here, the power per semiconductor and number of semiconductors that can be installed. For the first sub-barrier, as Moore's law suggested, the computational power of these silicon chips doubled in every 2 years, and we are reaching to the limits of this silicon technology because we are now talking at the atomic scale, manufacturing with atom level precision, and it looks like we are very close to the physical world barrier here if we cannot unlock the quantum world, at least for the silicon based computing. But there are some alternative solutions on the way, like photonic integrated circuits, which might radically change our computing power and create another revolution. And there is also quantum computing chips like Google's Willow, which they talked about recently, but we are still far away for a practical one to be built for everyday use. Apart from mathematical and natural limits, manufacturing these semiconductors is also an incredibly complex process and requires too many shipments across the globe. We have a handful of specialized companies in the supply chain that creates a bottleneck for scaling, which brings us to the second sub-barrier under computing power. That is the number of chips you need to install. This is another bottleneck problem, and it actually impacts global politics because we are shifting to an AI economy. Every other country and company wants its share of computing power to grow. Currently, the US and China have the most computational power installed in their data centers, but India, UK, Germany, Japan, and many other countries are investing also. And the recent conflict of China and US is basically Based on this competition, US is trying to cripple China's access to advanced chips and tools that make those chips, and most notably Nvidia and ASML. And these are the current barriers for the development of AI models further. If you like this structured approach to AI economy from the perspective of problem and solution dynamics, I can share you a quarterly review of these challenges and see how things are evolving and what can be the potential next steps together. If you like this idea, please share your thoughts in the comments, please. Alright, let's move to the second dominant problem that emerged in industrial economy and knowledge economy failed to address, and handing over now to AI economy, that is the energy consumption. Since the industrial economy, our energy consumption is increasing year over year and ages passed, but we are still highly dependent on carbon-based energy production, which broke the natural cycles of this world, pumping huge amounts of greenhouse gases to the atmosphere and thus cause global warming. This dominant problem of global climate crisis will be the defining problem of AI economy in a decade if we miss our targets to limit global average temperature rise by 1.5 Celsius degrees, and it looks like we are missing. There are many research and predictions on this topic that it's impossible to cover the whole topic entirely here, but let's look at the reinforcing loop of this problem in the economy. Here is the oversimplified systems dynamic for energy emission problem. What this tells you is that as population grow, energy needed to operate this economy increases, and that need can be met either by renewables or non-renewables. Renewables are free of greenhouse gas emissions, thus good for meeting the global target of limiting average temperature rise by 1.5 Celsius degrees, but there is not enough installments to meet the energy demand, so investments should be made to increase this capacity. And generally, these investments are made through borrowing money, which increases the debt ratios of governments and corporations, so it's a tricky game. On the other hand, if we continue to use non-renewables excessively, we definitely miss the target. Thus, policymakers also push efficiency initiatives across industries to lower the total demand because it is cheaper than renewable investment. Now, with the help of AI models, there is a good chance that companies can market super smart devices and products that optimizes energy use to decrease the energy consumption, which is far more cost effective in the short run to fight against this greenhouse gas emission problem, which is crucial when you consider the high debt ratios of leading countries nowadays. However, these AI models are energy intensive to develop and use at the first stage at least, which can bump energy needed to operate this economy and greenhouse gas emission by up to 7% according to Morgan Stanley in 10 years. The potential solution of metacognition and photonic integrated circuits that we mentioned in the barriers for the first dominant problem can decrease the energy consumption required drastically to train these models and use of applications. So long story short, it is pretty hard to foresee what will happen for the second dominant problem, at least for now. And finally, the last problem, social and cultural problems that industrial economy created and knowledge economy put more problems on it and failed to address. The two most pressing issues of this category are job displacements and inequality in wealth distribution. As I mentioned earlier, this wealth inequality thing could possibly begin during agricultural economy, maybe a little bit earlier, maybe a little bit later, I don't know. But let's look at its dynamics starting from the industrial economy. Because in this era, the core capital was machinery mainly, and the one who can access machinery can increase the chances of success along with access to the industrial labor and trade networks. So it was essentially a success to the successful system. When shifted to knowledge economy, this time access to education replaced the machinery because educated human intelligence is the core capital. But the successful archetype remained as it is, with a little bit policy adjustments to help poor's access to education and increase their wealth a little bit, but so far not so good. And now as we shift towards AI economy, the defining capital for the success will be access to the latest AI systems. And yes, in the AI economy, we face a new wave of displacement, not just for blue collar jobs, but increasingly for white collar roles, once thought to be require uniquely human intelligence, right? Because until now, the core capital was the human intelligence that finds out the processes to create a desired output, but now AI models start to do that. And as automation scales, the wealth generated by AI disproportionately accumulates in the hands of those who own the technology and its supply chain, obviously, including corporations, investors, and a small group of tech pioneers. This intensifies existing wealth gaps, with fewer individuals and organizations controlling the majority of the value in this economy. But can this be solved in the AI economy? Can AI break these reinforcing cycles as well? The answer lies in how we choose to organize and adapt our systems to this shift. Remember, at each transition, we reorganize our structures to adapt. Here are three key approaches to address these depressing issues. Reorganizing redistribution mechanisms. This is the first one. Policies like universal basic income and progressive taxation can ensure that the wealth generated by AI benefits society broadly. The goal isn't just redistribution, but providing a safety net for those displaced by automation, allowing them to reskill and contribute to the economy in other ways. An alternative policy that I have been thinking a lot for the last couple of years is gradual ownership transfer of corporations to its employees through establishing a culture of libertarianism. That's an interesting concept, and I will talk about it in 2025 for sure. The second approach is reskilling and lifelong learning. We must reimagine education and workforce training to focus on adaptability, creativity, and interdisciplinary skills. Governments, corporations, and educational institutions need to collaborate on scalable programs that equip individuals with the tools to thrive in this AI economy. AI itself can play a role here, providing personalized learning paths and accessible education to the masses. And that's why I started this channel actually. I believe in improving interdisciplinary skills to help current workforce to work with AI for better. And third approach is inclusive AI governance. Regulation is critical to ensure that AI development and deployment align with the societal values. Transparency in AI decision making, ethical guidelines, and global cooperation can help mitigate power imbalances. Think of this as creating a social contract for the AI age, one that prioritizes equity and inclusivity over unchecked growth. This must be the essential principle from now on for all global organizations, but we see not much effort here as of this video recorded. Ultimately, solving these issues requires a shift in perspective. The first perspective we need to shift is viewing labor not as expendable but as a key in this transformation who adapts and thrives. The second perspective we need to shift is treating wealth not as a privilege of the few but as a collective responsibility. And last shift we need to make in our perspective is that designing systems where human and artificial intelligence complement each other rather than compete. The AI economy presents a profound opportunity not only build wealth but to redefine how it's distributed and experienced, right? If we address these challenges with intention, this transition could lead to a more equitable and thriving society and ultimately can lead the next generations for a transition to wisdom economy. It's up to all of us, the policymakers, technologists, and citizens, to ensure that outcome. As you can observe, there is an uninterrupted pattern since the agricultural economy. When a problem emerges, we first invest in researches or experiments or both, and then create a breakthrough to solve the issue, and then scale that solution to the masses until a new problem emerges. usually related to the prior solution, right? Because as we progress technologically and mentally, after each breakthrough, we observe an increase in complexity. And then we solve that complexity, and it feels like AI will break that pattern once and for good. Because if you have a machine that can digest any level of complexity, and the complexity will no longer be a pattern. However, until reaching to that point in some future, hopefully, we need to be aware that as the complexity increases, we always shift towards a better organizational models. But in the meantime, we try a lot and fail a lot. Remember, every archaeological site is a representation of a fail. Please do not feel like we are all slouching towards Bethlehem as William Butler Yeats wrote 100 years ago during the days of the First World War, looking to the world feeling desperate. It is a great thing that we can talk about now these social and cultural problems as a necessity to be addressed through economy, because 150 years ago our grandparents did not have the chance to learn and discuss about what's coming. They didn't even have this communication channels we have, and what happened is the end of empires and beginning of modern democracies when we closed the industrial economy and opened the knowledge economy. Yes, it was bloody, but ultimately we thrived. And today it feels like, as in the last days of those empires, where the last standing man pushing the old system a little bit more, which is parallel what we see today with all these old men competing for one last round across the globe. I'm sure that they are the last men alive of this previous era, and today our only responsibility is to divert political agenda to meet our needs rather than some elites. History proves that we did, and so we can. All we need is to try our best. Even if we fail for the short term, we have time to make it right. And we have come to an end for this mini series. I hope you enjoyed this, and I want to close this mini series with the words of Teddy Roosevelt, which I feel like we should remember from time to time. It is not the critic who counts, and not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The critic belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, and who, at the best, knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who, at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly.